Who do we have first?
Up first is Steve from the Gold Coast.
Oh, right on. Hey, Steve. Welcome.
Hello, Hal. I mean, thank you. I mean, you should take it easy on the QAnon people. I mean, it's been one disillusionment after another. It was
Oh, it's
only a few
brutal.
weeks before this story broke, that their hero was supposed to repel into the Rose Garden and take the reins of power,
Mm-hmm.
from Joe Biden, and assume the presidency. And, when that didn't happen, I mean, how many more disappointments can they take? So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And on that note about, whether or not there's some sort of a conspiracy to extort money from Matt Gaetz, fine. I mean, if I'm under investigation for trafficking drugs and someone from the DEA comes to me and says, I can make your case disappear or do something about your case
Uh-huh.
if you pay me X amount of money or loan me, okay, fine. Okay, that should possibly be investigated. It's a separate issue. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm still possibly guilty of
That's
trafficking
right.
drugs.
That's
One has nothing to do with the other. But
well, that was the issue with this
that's
overall. Absolutely, was that at no point, and again, they're using the term extortion, like I said, to create this false victimization narrative, because at no point does he say he's trying to they created these charges. These folks made up this stuff, or while they were in the DOJ, they concocted a bunch of evidence and put it into the machine and said, I know where it's hidden and I can stop it if that kind of thing. None of that is true. It's still.
Well, I guarantee you, I guarantee you that the crazy QAnons are folding this into that sort of thing. So in other words, Matt Gaetz was the champion that supported Donald Trump, and of course, QAnon is about saving all the children who were being trafficked by the Democrats. So therefore, they must have created this fake case against Matt Gaetz because he's our champion. Just like they create all sorts of fake things against Donald Trump. I mean, I have not heard this, but I guarantee you that's the narrative.
Yeah, well, part of it is, I mean, part of the thing they have to deal with is that Trump himself isn't coming to Matt Gaetz's aid right now. According to, insiders, everybody around Trump is telling him right now, at least for the time being, to stiff arm Matt Gaetz because he can't call up Bill Barr because they're on the outs and go, is this true or real? And he won't tell him anyways now because God knows that phone call will get out. So Gaetz is like, it's on his own.
And as we all know, I mean, Barr was in this impossible situation because on the one hand, there's this legitimate investigation of Gaetz, but on the other hand, he is one of the most ardent defenders of his boss. So, and very popular within the Republican Party. So how do we distance ourselves from this idiot while at the same time continue to allow him to be a mouthpiece on Fox and other entities?
Right.
So yeah, they were sort of between a rock and a hard place. But of course, losing the election, it just, well, who cares what happens to him now? We're out of power anyway.
Well, and also, there's been a lot of talk about, there has also been a lot, Matt Gaetz, interestingly enough, more than any other person, it's very peculiar, in the Republican Party, has been talking about not just leaving, but multiple ways that he would leave Congress almost immediately. Starting around, November of last year, was like, if he loses, I'm going with him kind of thing. And then there was this period where he was like, I would gladly leave my seat in Congress to go be part of Trump's team, his legal team. Remember? And so he was going to leave on that, and now he's looking for jobs at Newsmax and OAN, and basically anywhere to get out of where the ethics part of it will be brought up, thinking that it will just kind of go away, or it just won't be as public if he's not a sitting congressperson. I mean, it's one of the reasons why you resign.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And if I might, the real reason I called it was the infrastructure issue. And I mean, you hit it right on the head. The Republicans are going to have a real hard time maneuvering this in terms of how they're going to rationalize to people, the lack of willingness to support this. I mean, they're the ones who are constantly talking about how far behind China we are. They're kicking our butts everywhere on Earth.
Right.
We need to repair our bridges, our roads. We need to invest in education, R&D, all these things. Your constituents want this. Everybody else wants this. You don't want it. And people need to understand that when you invest in infrastructure, there's this concept of value-added benefits. So in other words, when we built the interstate highway system, yes, it cost billions of dollars. Guess what? That hit by many economic standards, that has been repaid 100, if not 1,000 times over, depending upon where you are in America. Because Amazon only exists as this mega company because
Right.
American taxpayers pays for roads and airports and every other way that you're passing.
And the internet.
Some guy is making and selling. Right, exactly. So all
Right.
of that, we make Jeff Bezos what he is. So, and when you invest in something, then that is then used to create more wealth, which creates more wealth. I mean, it's this wonderful process. So, you build a tractor, guess what? It's not like building a Ferrari. So,
Yes.
I like to drive sports cars, but there's not much value added in that when I buy one. You sell somebody a school bus or a tractor.
They might help you procreate, I think is what. I think the goal with a sports car is that it will aid you in procreation, which is one of life's paths. So yeah.
Well, it will aid you in the process of procreation. I'm not sure we're looking to procreate, but okay.
Yeah, so
I think we're on that one.
Right.
But so I don't know how they're going to get out from under this one, other than just simply arguing that it's a Democratic bill, and therefore we don't want the Democrats to win because God forbid that should happen.
That's right.
When historians look back, if Biden can get this passed, you look back at Democratic administrations. Biden got the infrastructure bill passed, got us through the COVID thing. Before that, the Affordable Care Act was perhaps a precursor to pass some semblance of something that would look like universal health care in this country, single payer. Those are the things that we'll look back and say those are the hallmarks. And then you look back at what exactly did George Bush do? What did Donald Trump do?
Yes.
To compare to those things. I mean,
Right.
it won't even be close. But
No.
that's been the tradition of how Republicans and Democrats govern.
Yeah, they can't. Well, you have to understand if they allow Democratic plans to actually flourish and they are successful, that is the primary nightmare beyond all like voter suppression and all the other stuff that they're trying. The biggest nightmare they have is how popular these bills are and how effective they will be. You can directly track
Exactly.
the extra jobs even right now coming from the American Rescue Plan because people are like, okay, my business isn't going to fold. I can afford to hire people. People are coming back out. People are getting vaccinated. We're moving out of this thing. If they didn't believe that, then hiring would have stalled. But they believe it. It's a faith-based moment economically.
You're absolutely right, and that was their biggest fear in terms of the Affordable Care Act. They needed to discourage people from supporting it before it got passed because they knew full well once it was implemented and once people started to see the benefits, there was going to be no way that America was going to backpedal on the Affordable Care Act. Now there are entire elements of it in which they know that they could never repeal. Because again, Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that the whole like we're always going to protect pre-existing conditions, never presenting a way of how you do it, because how you do it is through some form of either putting more money into it through taxation or making people pay into it through a public option or an individual mandate, which they would fight back against. So it just Trump's whole idea about we're going to always protect people with pre-existing conditions without any means of paying for it because he just wants to play Santa Claus and pretend like they actually care when they clearly don't. You know what I mean? It's like if we all need to dig a tunnel through a mountain and they want to talk about how much they care about the safety of the tunnel, but they won't even pick up a shovel. That is where they are. And that's what's going to happen, by the way. The American Rescue Plan and the ensuing infrastructure package, which will pass, a form of it will pass, and it will be ginormous. It will more than likely pass with the tax increase in it, and they'll go around the country selling it. It might take about a month and a half before they present it. They'll do it right before summer. The vote will happen right about the time that people are like, kids are getting out of school and summer's starting, and people are going to want to start going out again. So it will the American people are not going to be consuming news this summer the way they were consuming it last summer or all through the pandemic. They simply aren't. And so using this as a hammer to try and make them look evil, make Democrats look evil, is not going to work. And the benefits from it are not only going to help people who didn't vote for Joe Biden, but they're incredibly popular amongst Republicans across the board. So,
absolutely, and especially among people who are, guess what? They're big donor people. The people who utilize the roads and infrastructure and bridges and airports, to move their goods and services, love the idea of American taxpayers investing in that thing.
Right.
So,
well, they all went home and talked about They all went home. Madison Hawthorne, he's wheelchair bound. He was a star of the RNC last year. He has weird sexual assaults, or sexual harassment stuff in his past that they glossed over, and a lot of like stolen Valerie weirdness that in his past. It seems like people have been talking about his image as being this kind of smokescreen, but he went straight home and was like, "Look at all these projects that got funded." And it was all
Right.
he didn't vote for it. Neither did Lauren Boebert. Neither did
exactly.
None of them.
But as you pointed out, these are the guys who will be there with the shovel at the groundbreaking.
Yes, they'll all be at the ribbon cuttings, patting themselves on the back, going, "This is the heartland of America. This is where work gets done. No, we want real jobs, not welfare here." Meanwhile, these jobs wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the American Rescue Plan or indeed the ensuing infrastructure plan, the American Jobs Act. Thanks for the call, Steve. I got to take a break.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back right after this.